Are you ready for a 2019 fantasy football mock draft? This mock draft series will break down a video per round. So we'll do round 1 in video 1, round 2 in video 2, and so on. So let's get over to the board and start mock drafting. Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show. Okay, you're looking at the big board here. I've got Alvin Kamara going number 1. Now, you could argue any of the big 4, I get it. The way I look at it is this. Alvin Kamara runs the ball about 190 to 205 times. That is a recipe for a guy like him at his size, his ability to stay healthy. He does his damage in both receiving and rushing yards. You don't want him getting over 200 carries. He's a lock for 12, 13, 14 TDs. I think he could pull in 90 to 100 balls in 2019. I get it if you like Zeke. I get it if you like McCaffrey, and I also get it if you can't pass on Barkley here. All 4 of them are amazing, but Kamara has the least amount of question marks. Him and Zeke, I think, are kind of by themselves without any red flags really at all. And that leads me to Elliott. Before Elliott got into trouble, he was my 1.02. Kamara was locked into my 1.01. Now, I had some worry when we didn't know what was going to go on with the whole potential ban that Elliott could have been facing, but at most it was 1 or 2 games. So he stayed at my 1.02, but I was ready to shove Barkley into the 2 spot if he was handed 2 or 3 game suspension. We now know that Elliott won't face any kind of ban in 2019, assuming he doesn't do anything else in the future. That means, in my opinion, Elliott is a lock at 1.02 for me. And I wouldn't call anyone crazy for taking him at 1.01. I actually love going after both of these guys in an auction in a 2-headed monster approach because you can still probably get like a Baker Mayfield. You have that 3-headed monster in place. If you hit on any of your sleeper wide receivers, game over. You can flat out dominate. Now, I don't recommend that approach for anybody that loses sleep at night by drafting kind of risky. So make sure you know what you're doing if you're going to take that approach. But I myself love the challenge of taking a team that is stacked very heavy and working on the holes in my lineup using all the sleepers that I accumulate. But that's me. Barkley, I worry a little bit about the fact that he's going to be looking at a lot of 8-man fronts, a lot of 3 and outs, not a very good passing attack at all. But the guy's a beast. The numbers will likely be there. He'll be less efficient than he's capable of being in a better offense. He'll have to work harder for every touchdown. And while I'm not predicting any kind of bust at all, I can't rank him 1. I can't rank him 2 based on his offense and the likelihood that he's going to be less efficient than he's capable of being. McCaffrey, we all know this is our top 4. It's all about how you organize them. For me, why try and fix what isn't broken? Why gain the weight? It worries me enough to make him my number 4 consistently when I'm doing a mock draft. McCaffrey is going to be, in my opinion, more susceptible to injury, weighing more and hitting the ground over and over at a heavier weight. He was already overworked last year. I'm not too concerned about that by itself. Again, nothing I'm saying is going to concern me enough to bump him out of my top 4. But when we're talking about who in this top 4 group is more of a lock to stay healthy and have a very, very good season, that's why Elliott and Kamara float to the top. McCaffrey could avoid more upright injury, absorbing more of those hits that he takes all the time. I get that. The weight gain could help with that. But I think hitting the ground over and over at a heavier weight, playing at a weight you're not completely used to, which could slow him down a little bit. Reasons for a little bit of concern. You can't go wrong with Melvin Gordon, I think, at 1.05. You can't really go wrong with Hopkins or Davante Adams. But if there's one running back capable of breaching the top 4, it is this guy. He could slip in at number 4 if he played 16 games. But even at 14 games, Melvin Gordon can get you double-digit touchdowns with ease. You can't go wrong with DeAndre Hopkins as your number 1 wide receiver. I think he's a lock for 1,400 yards, 12 to 14 TDs, and probably 100 receptions. Deshaun Watson's 1 more year healthier. He took a lot of hits last year. They will protect him better. I think this offense takes a step forward in general. And Hopkins has been top 2 overall in terms of consistency for 2 straight years. Davante Adams, the number 1 wide receiver. in terms of being consistent last year, depending on the data you look at. I think Green Bay and Rodgers get back to tossing 40 TDs, and Adams is going to get you 12 to 14 of those. He's arguably the best wide receiver on the board, and you wouldn't be crazy to make him the number one wide receiver off the board, but it is really close. And if you like to stack your QB and wide receiver, this is probably one of my favorite ones to stack in 2019. Because again, I think that Rodgers is looking at least 38 to 41 TDs in 2019, and Adams should grab at least 12 to 14 of those. Mike Thomas, very, very easily could be the number one wide receiver in 2019. I think you're looking at 1,400 yards, 100 receptions, and 12 to 14 TDs. Again, same numbers that Adams could produce, the same numbers that Hopkins could produce. In a sense, these guys are interchangeable for me in terms of being ranked in that 1 to 3 range in a mock draft, and where I think they could end up. David Johnson is in a great situation in that Kingsbury attack that's going to be spread out. Allow David Johnson wide open rushing lanes and receiving lanes. Kyler Murray will be able to mature fast and make less mistakes in this offense. I love this offense and what this coaching staff is doing. If healthy, I see no reason why DJ wouldn't bounce back into being a top 4 running back in fantasy football. It's all about, can he stay healthy? Here's the bold prediction in the entire first round. Odell Beckham Jr. I rank him here. I can't stress enough, though, that you can let him fall to the second round 9 times out of 10. He will fall. Even though I rank Hopkins, Adams, and Thomas ahead of him, because he can fall, I'm going to predict that Odell Beckham Jr. is the number one fantasy football wide receiver in 2019. He's happy, he's consistent when he's on the field, and I think he's going to work hard to stay healthy, and that offense, more importantly, is going to live in the red zone in 2019. It's amazing how efficient Odell was in that New York Giants passing attack. Imagine what he's going to do if healthy, which is the only reason he falls into the second round. Imagine what he'll do if healthy, getting fed TD passes left and right from Baker Mayfield, who I predict will be a top 3 to 4 QB in 2019. Someone's going to eat more than anybody in Cleveland in 2019, and it's going to be this guy. I think he'll lead the league in touchdowns, and he'll be the number one fantasy football wide receiver in 2019. And this won't look so bold come end of the year. Right now, it's going to ruffle a lot of feathers, and I expect that. Lev Bell. Ranking him at 11 feels right. I think he has enough appeal and upside at that range, but he still feels very risky. I don't think we can expect the numbers of old, but we haven't seen him decline yet, and that's a very important part of this argument. If he had gotten hurt and declined and we were hoping he bounced back, that would be one thing, but the guy hasn't faltered on us yet, and while he took an entire year off, he also has fresh legs. I think he's undervalued a little more than he's overvalued at 11. It feels about right. I certainly wouldn't draft him in more than 10 or 15% of my leagues because I wouldn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, and this does feel a little bit risky. But I do want shares of Bell in 2019 because I think he still has a shot at being a top 5 running back. So the Odell ranking probably is shocking a few people. Dalvin Cook at number 12 might also shock some people. I think Dalvin Cook has top 5 to 7 overall value in 2019. There's a little bit of injury risk, but I think it's built into a second round value. Here's where I hammer the point home. Before I read it in the comments, Smitty, you're ranking Cook too high, you're ranking Odell too high. Draft Odell and Cook at the top of the second because you can. If you reach for Odell or Cook, which are really the only, you could say, reaches on this board, you'd still be okay. You're not paying crazy value. But maximizing value at every pick is key to building the best fantasy football team. So given that Odell Beckham Jr. will fall 9 times out of 10 to 2.01 or beyond, given that Dalvin Cook will most likely fall to 2.01 and beyond 8, maybe even 7 times out of 10, the odds are good if you let them fall. If you've got the bookend picks in 2019, one of my favorite approaches is drafting Mike Thomas, who also sometimes falls to the top of the second round. Draft Mike Thomas at 12, draft Odell or Cook at 13. So there you have it. There's my top 12 2019 fantasy football players, round 1 of my mock draft series. The next video will be round 2. I hope you enjoyed that. Please comment below. Who do you think went too high? Who do you think went too low? Who was left out? I know you're thinking, should Julio be there? What about Juju? I'll talk about that in round 2, which is the next video coming up in the next day or so. Subscribe, follow, and comment below. Let's start talking about the top 12 players from this mock draft right here.